Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. In today's episode, we have leftist political commentator Hasan from the Young Turks coming out and doing a reaction video himself on Ben Shapiro supposedly running away from a debate. I don't know what debate he's talking about, but we'll find out in just a moment. As always, if you want to support us here at the Bald Brad Show, or heck, support a conservative, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Share this link with your friends and family all over social media. And with that being said, let's jump into it.
Here is an Elizabeth Warren organizer absolutely comstering Ben Shapiro, making him shake in his little boots. Okay,
and we're gonna pause it here for a moment, folks. And I'm sorry it's the first 10 seconds, but what a weird thing to say, right? And Hasan's not a young guy. I think he's like in his 30s. I mean, yes, that is considered young, but he's not a dumb guy. And I was actually kind of shocked that he would talk like this. I've never seen his Twitch stream, so maybe that's something that's completely normal. I've only seen him on TV, as well as I think Politicon against Charlie Kirk, and this was a while ago. And usually he's a pretty respectful guy. He doesn't talk like that. So it makes me think that he definitely caters to his audience. And so I'm wondering if his Twitch audience is high schoolers to maybe 18 to 22-year-olds. And that's nothing against his audience. You know, a lot of respect for clearly the Twitch stream that he's built. He has a lot of followers on YouTube. I think a lot of that does come from his uncle from the Young Turks, but I don't want to diminish his intelligence. I got a lot of respect for the arguments that he creates. I don't agree with Hasan, but he creates good arguments that I think create good discussions, and it makes people think, including myself. So that I do appreciate. It's not a jab at his audience. It's just if you're talking like that, it makes me wonder who he's catering to, and if he's just more so doing it because he's an entertainer, or that's just how he really talks, which, you know, I would like to see the Hasan on TV that I see on Twitch here, or vice versa, and I would like it to be the same guy, and it just doesn't seem to be.
Okay.
Know much about you, so I have a series of back and forth questions, if that's okay, just before I ask my question. So do you come from Holocaust survivors, or are you a Jewish family that didn't?
So my great-great-grandparents arrived here. A lot of our extended family was killed in the Holocaust, but our immediate
Your
family...
great-great-grandparents, but not your grandparents.
Right.
Oh,
I gotta
do you
pee, I'll be
have
back.
friends whose grandparents were Holocaust survivors or anything like
Of course,
that?
many of them. Yeah, I've helped write memoirs of Holocaust
Yeah.
survivors. Yeah.
Their families are kind of messed up, right? Like, my family is very messed up.
I mean, if you go through a trauma like the Holocaust, I would imagine...
They teach that trauma between generations. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, trauma very often in a lot of circumstances is passed down. I mean, I know some kids of Holocaust survivors who turned out fantastic and some who didn't. I mean, that's
Yeah. Okay, so you are officially woke. That is what wokeness is about. It's like, people's grandparents or their great-grandparents were slaves.
Well, it's okay. No, it's okay. Guys,
Fuck you, I'm talking!
Guys, I actually want to hear. I want to hear.
No, this
it's
guy,
okay. It's okay. I want to hear. Let's at least hear the argument. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Go.
What? He wants to hear me.
I do want to hear it. It's fine. Let him go. Let's hear it.
Come on. I'll just,
So explain how that's woke.
So, I mean, the whole thing is like, let's see. So during Silent Cal, Calvin Coolidge's administration, do you know about like the Great Mississippi Flood back in the 1930s?
I understand that American history is filled with racial evil.
Yeah. And that causes some intergenerational trauma, which affects people's ability to be, effective, and things like that.
Fine. So let me ask you a question.
So far, the guy that's talking, that's asking a series of questions here, is not wrong in the terms of wokeness or describing what woke is and relating to Ben Shapiro. So I'm kind of waiting to see what happens here in terms of Ben Shapiro storming off the stage or something like that, the way Hasan says runs away.
Yeah.
Why? So if the idea is that history has consequences, of course that's true. That's not wokeness.
Yeah.
That is not wokeness. What wokeness suggests is that fundamental institutions in American society
are so... No, it doesn't.
Yes, it 100% does.
I ran Elizabeth Warren's campaign. I helped organize her volunteers around here.
Okay, to be fair, I would laugh at that too. It's fucking Elizabeth Warren.
I agree with Hasan.
Listen, this is a well-intentioned guy. Okay, so let's give him the time.
We don't know if he's well-intentioned, but I do agree with Hasan here that it's probably not something you should be boasting about because it's Elizabeth Warren, but at least me and Hasan agree on something already.
I am a representative of wokeness.
Okay, well,
and that's just, this is all it is.
Well, I mean, I hope that
By the way, I think this kid is doing a pretty good job of describing intergenerational trauma and systemic oppression by using something that Ben Shapiro talks about and cares about. A concept that he not only understands but advocates for. Intergenerational trauma for Jews as a consequence of systemic oppression that they faced and continue to face, like remnants of such oppression. So he's doing a good job. Like, this is a perfect fucking way to craft an argument for someone like Ben Shapiro. It's great because he himself is Jewish as well, so Ben can't.
I'm assuming he doesn't like Ben Shapiro because he keeps calling him Ben Shapiro, or Bebo. However, I don't know how he's describing, like saying it specifically, but either way, I actually agree with Hasan on what he's saying here about the guy crafting an argument. The argument is showing trauma through intergenerational trauma itself that's being passed down. So I do agree with that, and how he's correlating it with wokeness and relating it to Ben Shapiro. So I actually agree with Hasan here. So I'm kind of thrown off guard a little bit.
Turn around and be like, you're anti-Semitic immediately. Like, he literally hit him with the fucking, I have immediate relatives, like closer relatives than you, that were victims in the Holocaust. Like, got murdered in the Holocaust. So he already hit that card he slammed the card on the table, okay? And he was like, hey, what's up? And now he's going in for the kill by making an adequate comparison between black people and the systemic abuse that they withstood in the United States of America, and how our systems were designed in a way to oppress black people, and the
Yeah, but Ben Shapiro just talked about fundamental institutions. So Hasan can't say about the systems that are in place because those systems are usually built through some sort of institution itself. So contradiction going on between what the gentleman is answering the question here to what Ben Shapiro said about talking about fundamental institutions to what Hasan is saying. So I don't know if anybody's following the linear track there, but there's basically three different arguments that are being said. You have the guy, again, that's talking about that trauma, and that trauma is being passed down, and that correlates to wokeness, which is actually definitionally true, because a wokeness is just talking about bringing alertness to some sort of systemic oppression, basically. And Ben Shapiro is saying, well, there's fundamental institutions that we could talk about that bring that type of oppression. And then Hasan's bringing in an argument talking about those systems itself, but that's not what the initial guy was talking about, because he interrupted Ben and said that's not true. So a little bit of stuff going on here that just kind of doesn't add up, but I'll continue.
Outcomes of said oppression and the intergenerational trauma in a way that Ben understands. So that's actually a really good way to fucking debate lord a debate pervert, okay? Hats off, shouts out to the fucking Elizabeth Warren campaign organizer. Very good.
When I went to go get my first tattoo, the guy had lightning bolts and 88s tattooed on his neck. And as a Jewish person, that's really messed up. It's basically a threat.
There are racist people.
Now he's trying to describe that, like, Ben should, in a way that Ben can understand, seeing remnants of that same kind of power struggle from the side of the oppressor in contemporary society is going to very clearly create an environment of hostility. The overarching argument here is most likely going to revolve around why certain imagery in college campuses invoke feelings, especially when the unrecognized trauma or the systemic abuse is continuing, okay?
So a couple assumptions being made here is that there's unrecognized trauma. You know, sometimes you don't know if somebody's Jewish, you don't know somebody's cultural background. And so it's tough as somebody on the outside that you have no idea who's in your classroom, or you have no idea who your peer is, your colleague, assuming oppression or assuming that they are somebody or that they went through that trauma. Just because somebody's Jewish does not mean that they, like Ben started off with, have inherited that trauma themselves or that it was actually passed down to them. So I don't agree fully with Hasan here. I definitely agree with some things he's saying, that there are certain imagery, there are certain things on colleges' campuses or certain institutions that could bring about that trauma. So that part I think is true.
Like, there's a difference between, like, that's why you don't want to invite Nazis to a college campus, because when you invite a Nazi to a college campus, all of a sudden that leads to a less safe space.
Do I agree with Nazis? Absolutely not. But if it's a publicly funded college, I do think that people should be able to invite whoever they want to allow that freedom of speech. Again, I don't agree with Nazis. I don't agree with racism. I don't agree with any of that stuff. I can't be more clear on it. But I do think people have the right to invite people who they want, even if I disagree with it. Like, I fully disagree with Hasan, I think, on his political views. Again, I think we're able to decipher certain parts of his argument that I can agree with and certain parts I can disagree with, which I've already done. But I think people should be allowed to come on college campuses and speak their mind.
for all of the victims, the marginalized communities. It's not just about the fifis, okay, of Jewish people or fucking, you know, trans people or black people or people just that do not fit the in-group that the Nazis are supposedly trying to defend, but it's more so the legitimate hostility in that environment when you legitimize the point of view and the perspective of a neo-Nazi by inviting them over to your college campus. Okay? And he's using that. He's using the neo-Nazi argument and the intergenerational trauma from the Holocaust and the systemic oppression that Jews have withstood as a way to basically draw a comparison for trans people and for black people. Let's continue.
Who exist. The argument that you're making, and I'm going to close with this because this is going in weird directions and I don't really want to...
It's going in a weird direction where Ben is literally getting fucking cumstered, okay? That's the direction it's going to.
So
and
weird.
Not only that, but
nothing's really happened yet. I'm not even going to use the term that he's using, but that doesn't make sense to me. What Hasan is saying is that we're only a few minutes into this, and there hasn't been an agreement on what wokeness is, because again, Ben tried to describe it and the guy interrupted him. And the guy said, no, I don't agree with that, when Ben specifically said fundamental institutions. And then Hasan, you yourself was talking about fundamental institutions, upon which the Elizabeth Warren person doesn't agree that it's within those fundamental institutions. So a little bit confusing here of, you're saying Ben's getting destroyed here, but nothing's actually happened yet. I mean, there hasn't even really been a discussion. It's mostly been the guy interrupting Ben. Ben hasn't even really got a viewpoint out there. He couldn't even describe what he thought wokeness was, Ben, because the guy interrupted him. And I feel like this is going to continue, where the guy's just going to continually interrupt him without an actual debate happening. And then you're just going to say Ben gets destroyed. So that's where I see this going already. That's a normal thing from the left, from what I've seen in terms of them trying to say somebody on the right got destroyed. Again, some people on the right do get destroyed. Some people do lose in debates, but the tendency I see is this type of stuff going on where nothing happens. Oh, this person got destroyed and they really didn't.
But he's getting owned by a soft-spoken Warrenite, a radlib, if you will.
It's not
I don't really want to get
just
hold up a second. I let you get out your arguments, and now it's time for me to respond, because I let you say
okay, I'll let you respond, but
no, not but. Now's my turn.
You are not characterizing what I'm saying accurately.
Now it's my turn.
How does he know that when he hasn't let Ben talk yet? How do you know that somebody's not characterizing their argument accurately when you literally can't let the man get out a sentence?
Your definition is inaccurate. The reason your definition is inaccurate is because any sentient human being would acknowledge that history has consequences.
Right.
But if the idea is, but that's not what wokeism is. Wokeism is a different thing. Wokeism suggests that all inequalities of today are attributable to not only historic injustices, but also continuing injustices in the now. And that all
first of all, Ben turns around.
That's actually... I'm curious. I just want to see where Ben goes with this. Hasan keeps stopping it. I know I keep stopping it, but the guy just keeps interrupting. So far, what Ben's describing as wokeness is true. All wokeness is, if you actually look up the definition, it just talks about bringing alertness to injustices that happened in the past, and that uses the example of racism. So I just wanted to see what Ben has to say.
It says, I'm actually going to redefine what you're stating by basically saying the exact same thing. So if you're going to rewrite the definition of a concept that you yourself came up with anyway, because like no one's like, I'm a wokeist, you know what I mean? That's not a real thing. Why not just like make it look dumber? You literally just said every human being with a brain cell believes that systemic issues or historic precedents have consequences, you know? Historic precedents and like things that happen throughout history, of course, have consequences on human beings. But wokeism is something different. It's when historic things have consequences on people that are living in the past and also people that are living in the present. That's different. It's like, well, no, you just basically repeated the thing that you previously agreed on. Very strange. You could have crafted a better, like, weaker argument. If you're gonna straw man your opponent, don't fucking, don't go off and like.
Hasan could be right here. Hasan could very well be right, but Ben hasn't finished what he's saying, so you're kind of assuming something that again hasn't been fully stated yet. Again, I just want to hear what Ben has to say.
And admit that there is the argument is exactly the same.
Disparity is attributable to discrimination, not just that injustices in the now. And that all disparity is attributable to discrimination. Not just that.
A conservative is the only person. I want to know why. Why is it that conservatives...
I guess he's trying to make it seem like all matter, like a black person stubs their toe, and that's because of racism. Like, I think he's trying to... The straw manning on that part is like, all matter of discrimination, all forms of discrimination actually comes from prior historical context. I think that's what he's like trying to bastardize it into. He didn't do a really good job of describing that. He wasn't able to get that fucking straw man off.
No. I think there is some truth to what a little bit of what Hasan's saying and what Ben's saying as well, is that if you look at the term wokeness, which is, I'm assuming what all of us are agreeing upon here, is that it's just bringing awareness to some sort of injustice that caused some sort of oppression, whether it was in the past or now, which is what Ben said, which is piggybacking on the example that this gentleman from Elizabeth Warren's campaign utilized with the trauma being passed down from the Holocaust down to Jews. So the idea of being a victim doesn't necessarily get passed down from trauma, but that's what people are doing today, is that they might have never been victims at all due to some sort of oppression or some sort of institution, which Ben Shapiro described. But again, the Elizabeth Warren guy doesn't think it's in fundamental institutions, even though Hasan himself does. Not everybody that is quote unquote a victim is actually a victim of themselves. That's coming from that oppression in the past or some sort of victimization or bringing alertness. And so that's what Ben Shapiro, I believe, is talking about. And if you utilize the idea of wokeness, it's kind of somebody going out there shouting, well, there's racism out there. Well, yeah, there's racism out there. Wokeness is going, well, there's people that are oppressed. That's basically what wokeness is, bringing awareness to people that are oppressed. So, well, yeah, there's people that are oppressed. But if we don't actually redefine it, which Hasan doesn't like Ben doing, then we can't really come to a concrete individualistic example of who's actually woke and who isn't, because everybody's been marginalized. Everybody's been a victim from a micro scale or a macro scale, depending on who you're talking about. So I think it's important that Ben here does come out with a specific definition of what we're going to come to terms with on wokeness, because the one that's being utilized by the left is too broad. And if anybody knows Ben's arguments, as I do, because he's going all the way back from UCLA days when I used to follow him, is that he's very specific on what his definitions are so that we can actually solve problems. But the woke's definition of their ideology on wokeness, which again is the definition of the book, is just too broad. And Hasan doesn't like the fact that it's too broad. I do like that he's trying to understand Ben's argument here, but I don't agree with Hasan and I don't agree with Elizabeth Warren.
But for example, if a black person stubs their toe on a Lego, that's racism. That's not racism, actually. Okay, well, yeah, that's not, no one made that argument. That's not a thing.
Now, of course, nobody made the argument of somebody stubbing their toe on Legos, and I'm assuming he's joking here fully. But that analogy that Hasan used is actually pretty relevant in the sense of there are people that are claiming victimhood that aren't actually victims. They're claiming that they're woke when in the reality that they're not woke. Or they're looking at somebody else that is woke. That is fine, that they're bringing awareness and they're being woke on something. But again, some of the issues that they're claiming wokeness on aren't in fact woke, or they're not actually being oppressed themselves, or the other person that they're bringing oppression, not upon, but bringing awareness upon, saying that they're oppressed, they're not actually oppressed either. So this goes a lot deeper than I think what Hasan and Elizabeth Warren dude is talking about here.
You know what I mean? Which, by the way, in and of itself, for all the debate perverts in here, you guys know me as the guy who's incapable of debating and refuses to because he can't face the truths. But like, you know, that's a logical fallacy. What Ben Shapiro is doing, and the reason why he is a decent debate pervert in comparison to all of those other debate perverts, is that he is able to try to very quickly and swiftly rationalize a logical fallacy in an argument, whether it be gish galloping, whether it be an argument absurdum, I think that's what it's called, right? Like, it's just, he fires off multiple logical fallacies and then tries to very quickly rationalize them without their opponent understanding that they're doing that. And that's precisely why he's considered an extremely skilled, rhetorically gifted debate pervert. He strawmanned, and then he engaged with the strawman by pushing it to its logical extreme that no other sane person would actually make an argument around. Reduction ad absurdum. And I think that our boy here did a pretty good job of stopping Ben in his tracks and saying, that's not true. Only conservatives are.
No. He was just being disrespectful and not letting Ben finish his definition of what wokeism was, which he never did. And you just kept pausing as well. And then you came up with the whole story of what Ben was going to say, which he never got out in the first place, because then the guy went back to interrupting him. So no, he's not actually proving him wrong or anything of that nature. He's just not letting him finish talking.
The ones who describe wokeism like that
are the only people who define it like that. Why are conservatives the only people?
Okay, so we're gonna have to stop here because this is going nowhere. But
I agree.
I'm gonna have to stop with this with you because this is going nowhere. All I'm going to say is this.
It's not going nowhere. It's going to a place that you don't want it to go to, because for the first time ever, you are dealing with someone who, at the very least, is able to say, you're wrong. Stop putting words in my mouth. This is what's actually going on. When you're not talking to a college freshman that is flustered for being in front of a massive fucking audience for the first time ever with your pre-canned speech and your talking points that you have pre-established and honed for the past fucking 20 years that you've been doing this, that you got from the Heritage Foundation, you have to run away. And that's precisely what...
Well, he didn't just get his talking points from the Heritage Foundation. He gets them usually from books, right, that come from studies. He gets them a lot from Thomas Sowell, as a person he reads a lot. So, Milton Friedman. So a lot of the arguments is not coming from the Heritage Foundation. But, we could throw that out there because maybe his audience isn't going to be like, oh, well, this guy's wrong. I'm not saying I'm like fully agreeing with everything Ben says throughout his debates or everything like that. But I don't like the fact that, Hasan's just sitting there just saying these things and he knows his audience isn't going to question him. Just because Ben says something, I love Ben. I'm a follower of the Daily Wire. I'm an advocate of the Daily Wire. I love what they do. Doesn't mean that I go, oh, Ben said it, so it must be true. Oh, okay, all hail Ben. No, that's not what I'm saying. But Hasan's making it seem, like Ben's getting destroyed here, and he's not. And I agree with Ben. Nothing's happened. There hasn't even been really discussion on anything. Again, the guy just keeps interrupting Ben. So where's the debate? And I agree with Ben. It's not going anywhere. There hasn't even been established terms of what wokeness is because the guy just continues to interrupt him. And then somehow Hasan's like, oh, Ben's getting destroyed. Oh, here he goes. It's going to somewhere Ben doesn't like. It's like, it's silly, man. It's silly.
Ben is doing here. Mr. Freedom of Speech. I think all speech should, especially frustrating speech, should be allowed on college campuses, is straight up utilizing his position of authority in this circumstance to silence opposing speech because he could not do it. He could not deal with it.
Hasan.
Many such examples exist. One of the immediate ones that comes to mind is the BBC interview that he had with what's that old fucking Tory piece of shit's name? I mean, he fucking eviscerated Ben, but he is Andrew Neil.
He didn't eviscerate Ben. I actually watched that interview a while ago. And yeah, I don't think Ben handled it right. Ben himself said that he lost, right? Ben himself said, that guy won, me zero. So, and Ben even talks about it now of how he handled that wrongly. The guy was just, granted, the guy was asking Ben questions that Ben has already answered before. So he's going on Ben's past and Ben's like, I've already answered these questions before. Why are you bringing this back up? These are things you can research, yada, yada, yada. I think Ben obviously 100% could have handled it differently. Ben did run off. Ben did leave. So, he can definitely 100% Hasan here can use that for his argument, but that's not what's taking place here. And I think Hasan is mischaracterizing this wholeheartedly. And again, I don't think Hasan is dumb whatsoever. So I don't know why he's talking like this unless he's trying to cater to his audience, which again, I'm of the belief now, listening to him on his Twitch stream, how he acts differently from his Twitch stream to on TV. And I understand you got to watch your language on TV, but it seems like he's kind of catering to his audience more than anything. Because a lot of stuff he's kind of saying here is just not making sense.
When Andrew Neil and Ben Shapiro were having a conversation, and Ben Shapiro started calling Andrew Neil a liberal progressive. I mean, Andrew Neil is not a progressive by any right. We can watch that as well. He's Scottish, by the way. Okay, shut up. But he's not like that kind of Scottish.
See what I just am trying to understand your perspective.
Like again, I like Hasan. He's funny, he says things that, again, I disagree with. I know I'm repeating myself, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm out to get blood on this guy. There's a lot of things on the Young Turks that I think I'm going to show on my channel more that I just don't agree with. But that's pretty funny. His accent, stuff like that. I got to give it to him.
He says, I'm just trying to see your perspective. And immediately the crowd starts booing. It seems as though Ben is on the back foot here. For some reason, the crowd is not responding in a way where they would, side with who the intellectual giant is here. Because obviously, debate perverts love Ben Shapiro because he puts people on the back foot. Ben owns people in the free marketplace of ideas, right? That's why people love him. That's why he's the intellectual giant, the gladiator of the right in the marketplace of ideas. And yet here, his debate opponent is doing the same thing that Ben does to other people and causing Ben to be flustered. And yet his audience is not reacting in a way that they normally would. They're not turning around and making compilation videos about this guy saying like he fucking owned him. They're not turning around and going, maybe Ben isn't all that right in this circumstance. And that's precisely why I always say debates are pseudo-intellectual wrestling. WWE for dumb people.
All I'm going to say is this. To sum up,
I disagree. Your perspective. Just one more second. On the
fundamental level, you're shifting definitions to avoid the consequences of your...
Look at that. Someone ran in and literally put their fucking hand physically on the microphone to stop this person's takes. They were so scary for this.
It's not a matter of being scary, man. The guy just wouldn't shut up to let the other person answer the question upon which he went and stood in line to get his questions answered. So when you can't shut your mouth to let the other person talk, yeah, maybe you should have somebody put your hand in front of the mic so there could be a little bit of pause so somebody can actually get their thoughts out. But for some reason, Hasan can't see that. I don't know if he's blind to it, but he's trying to push this whole idea that, oh, the guy at free speech isn't allowing free speech to happen. I mean, Ben continually tries to get his argument out. People are booing, not at Ben, but at this guy for continually interrupting him. I don't know why this is so hard to see, and I don't know if Hasan is so deep into not liking Ben Shapiro or disliking him that he's just trying to make Ben look bad. It's a very, very odd thing. And it's kind of odd coming from Hasan. Again, he's a smart dude. So I don't know. It's weird.
Crowd of young conservatives here. They thought, wow, we can't have this person converse in this setting no
he's
longer.
Not conversing.
I mean, the things that he's
Conversation
saying,
goes back and
they
forth,
are
bud.
Too hard to hear.
On a fundamental level, you're shifting definitions to avoid the consequences of your own argument. And if the idea is...
And now they're debating the efficacy of debates all of a sudden, or whether or not this debate is happening. Look how quickly Ben Shapiro
really
went back into a corner in the most Weasley fucking way he can, shifts the conversation to, well, you're actually not following the sanctity of the pre-established debate confines that we have created. You are not an interlocutor that I would like to see no longer, sir. That's what he's doing, because he's fucking Weasley, and he's weaseling his little fucking way out of that conversation because he has nothing else to say. He's flustered. He's on the fucking back foot. He's backpedaling. And this kind of shit does make me really happy, I'm gonna be honest. As much as I hate debate perverts, I personally love watching a debate pervert like this get demolished thoroughly, piece by piece. And anyone who says that this is like not a good example of what happens to a debate pervert on the back pedal is wrong. Ultimately, it's inconsequential. It's not actually productive. No one in that room is going to ever second guess Ben Shapiro's takes or anything like that. But, you know, it doesn't matter. It's good because it demoralized Ben, and I like that. It makes
literally questioning Ben's idea of what wokeness was per the definition of what the left use. I think there is a clear distinction between what the left uses as the definition of wokeness and what the right does. I agree with what that Elizabeth Warren person said. I also explained as to why that was a problem, because the leftist idea of wokeness is too generalized. You can't even have a conversation because everybody on a micro macro scale have some sort of trauma that's passed down from history. So again, on a micro level, but also on a macro level. But how Hasan is characterizing this is just completely baffling, as if we're watching two different things happening here. Nothing happened. I don't think the woke person got destroyed. I don't think Ben got destroyed. There was no discussion. He just kept interrupting. So I don't know what Hasan again is watching here.
me happy.
It seems to me.
And final point. If you are going to hold on, if you are also, just final point to sum up there.
I would have kicked the guy out too.
Wow.
He doesn't want to have a discussion.
A group of young Americans, you know, youngest person in that crowd being like 55, are celebrating the fact that someone was swiftly removed for the crime. And I mean the crime, the criminal act of trying to have a conversation with Ben Shapiro. Perhaps conservatives don't.
It's honestly, it's actually silly. This is what I mean by I think it's all an act. I don't think this is really how this guy is. I think he's, again, catering to his audience, and he knows his audience is extremely far left or progressive, and they're probably a lot of young guys and gals. So I think that he's talking like this and he's doing this on purpose. I think it's an act. There's no way.
Care about free speech after all. Oh my, I am shocked.
Final point to
I can follow that.
Yeah,
but,
one more. I just want to make, honestly,
go ahead.
I want to make one final point to sum up there. If the idea is that traumas of the past invariably bleed down into the present, that does not explain.
Now that he has like adequately silenced his opposition, who can't actually retaliate or respond, he's going to then most likely, I assume.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what's happening. The guy finally was shut up for a little bit where Ben can actually get his argument out, which is what you just said. Maybe he is seeing what we're seeing, folks. Holy crap, it just took 14 minutes.
Misinterpret what he is saying and add on additional strawmen to that, and then end up attacking the strawman.
Also,
he's moving
just
away.
Final point to sum up there.
Yeah, you got him. You got him, brother.
That's not what they're clapping for. They're glad that the guy got chauffeured off because he was being disrespectful and interrupting him. But, you know, I guess Hasan can't see that.
point to
I can follow that.
Yeah,
but,
one more.
He's gonna do the shower boxing. That's what he's gonna do. You know when when you're in the playground, okay, when you're at school and you get fucking owned by the bully, and then later that night you're taking a shower and you're like, what the fuck?
I'm wondering if this is literally what Hasan did. So from what I've heard, he was extremely bullied when he was younger. And I think he was bullied for how he looked, which is why he works out so hard. I don't know if that's true. Maybe he'll respond to this video or something like that. I'm assuming that's what he did. Now, again, I actually was bullied severely in school. I was hit so many times in my face through elementary school. My teeth were crooked. So I had to get a lot of, teeth fixing and stuff like that through my dentist earlier on in life, through high school. So I know what it's like to be bullied. I never did this in the shower, so I don't know what he's talking about. Hey, maybe he's giving us a little bit insight on what he did when he was bullied, but I digress.
Such a better take. That's what he's gonna do, okay? Man, if I
Stop
only
it.
fucking told that bully, like, your mom sucked my dick or something, everyone would be fucking clapping at the playground. God damn it. Let's finish.
Well, I just want to make, honestly, I want to make one final point to sum up there.
Weirdo.
If the idea is that traumas of the past invariably bleed down into the present, that does not explain why certain groups that have been historically not only marginalized but slaughtered in mass genocide are some of the most successful groups in our society.
There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was talking about before. Micro, macro, some people are traumatized, some people aren't. Some people would fit into wokeness, some people wouldn't, which is exactly what Ben started off with when he was talking about initially at the very beginning, that some people are traumatized and some people aren't. And he talked about his own family. So he didn't sit there and straw man. He didn't sit there and silence the guy. The guy wouldn't shut up. And he gave an exact perfect idea and also definition of what wokeism is today.
Perhaps
100%
the
agree.
continuation of systemic oppression did not extend in the same capacity to certain groups as it did to others, because they were not considered to be the backbone of labor in the same way that, like, chattel slavery happened. But of course, he's just straight up hitting that line. That's cool.
So if the idea is,
he just, again, I find it funny how Hasan here gets upset with Ben on redefining what wokeism is to make more sense, not just his audience, but to others that are watching, that is actually true and is more concrete and is more specific than the wokeness that the left say it is, as well as Hasan. But then Hasan goes in and just basically re-says what Ben is going to say or did say, and that all of a sudden that's okay. So he's doing the exact same thing for his audience on Twitch that Ben was doing for his audience, as well as the audience on YouTube that were watching this live. So it's just okay.
Oh my God, what a fit, dude. Motherfuckers make fun of my fits, but are you joking? Look at my boy here, dude. This is hurt, dog. This is hurt. Straight up, what the fuck? Would you debate Ben Shapiro if you had the chance? I know you don't
That's
ever
weird
want
that
to do
people make
debates without
fun
being
of
insane. No,
Hasan for his
I've
look.
always maintained the position that, like,
I mean, his body structure is weird. His head doesn't really fit his body, and I'm not trying to make fun of the guy. I'm just saying he's so buff that it's like, I don't know, his clothes, I think he's a very sharp looking guy. I mean, I don't think Hasan's a bad looking dude. He wears nice clothes. I just found it odd that people, I guess, hound him for the stuff that he wears. I don't know. I think he looks fine.
debate clouded people. Straight up. I don't have a problem with that. What do you mean? I'll debate clouded people, or I'll debate for content, but I'm not going to fucking do it for, like, every random Tom, Dick, and Harry who's going to fucking try to activate and mobilize their community to fucking clip me out of context and, like, make a million YouTube videos out of it to be like, haha, Hasan believes this position that he doesn't actually hold. And they do it anyway, even when I don't debate them. So
if the idea is that past trauma always...
By the way, there's no editing in this video. We're going to show the complete context. So I'm not clipping him. I'm not taking him out of context, at least what I believe in. Just trying to follow his train of thought here and his logic, and it's just not linear.
Equals current inequality, or that my actions in, say, robbing a convenience store are attributable to bad actions that happened in Alabama in 1930, the answer to that is no. Don't rob...
Wait, what?
Current inequality, or that my actions in, say, robbing a convenience store are attributable to bad actions that happened in Alabama in 1930, the answer to that is no. Don't rob the convenience store. The only way...
Dude, holy shit. Just say the N-word, Ben. What the fuck? Yo, he just said, like, black people are criminals.
No, Hasan, clearly you're not following the logic of what's taking place. The guy in the debate literally brought up the 1930s in the Mississippi. So I'm assuming Ben is correlating that to what he said in the 1930s by Ben bringing up Alabama in the 1930s here. So when he tries to correlate and make connections to what the guy's argument was, which you said he wasn't going to do, that he was going to strawman, that he was going to twist it. So that Ben is actually assimilating the ideas to what the guy says to what he's saying now. All of a sudden he's saying the N-word and that, always, he's talking about black people that are criminals and all this stuff. It's like, dude, I don't know if he wasn't paying attention. I don't know. It's freaking weird.
Straight
man.
up.
So
like
weird.
Ben literally, he's just no holds barred. He got like a little bit of pushback and he literally was like, I'm going there now. That's crazy. This is perhaps the furthest you can go without like actually saying the N-word. This is like when a 14-year-old in a Call of Duty lobby is like losing the game and just says the N-word over and over again. That's Ben's version of that. Past trauma does not mean you can rob a convenience store, black people. That's what he's saying. And is of course like ironically an incredibly liberal analysis that is completely fucking devoid of any sort of materialist perspective attached to it. Okay, crime, specifically crime of that magnitude, of that sort, manifests in environments that have been held back due to their material conditions, due to the historic subjugation that people have been forced to exist in. He just basically went in.
This is like that person that you try to have a conversation with that says a bunch of things that don't make sense, that if you just combine a bunch of large words together, or if you take words that actually are a very big picture that don't have this very specific definition like wokeness does that the left was utilizing, this is the type of language that you get from a progressive leftist, which is how Hasan is talking right now. Basically said a bunch of nonsense and that he's just going to fly by it when Ben was actually, again, assimilating ideas to what the leftist person was talking about in the first place. But we'll look past that.
Only black people cause crimes and they blame prior wrongs for it. I'm glad that guy...
I don't know what might be more racist here. Him trying to assume that Ben is saying the N-word here when Ben, again, is making connections to ideas that the guy was talking about, or Hasan just assuming that all black people commit crimes because Ben never said that. So it seems like Hasan is more on the racist or discrimination side of things than Ben is, but I digress. Nobody will call him out on that because it's his audience.
Respond to this dumb take. Oh, wait, he's gone, lol. Exactly.
The way they are going to be able to break the chain of history is to make good decisions. What people on the left don't like to talk about is actual solutions. What they like to do is bitch about problems that existed 60 years ago and blame those.
Oh, dude, he hit the fucking Gary V note. He said
exactly
bitch.
What I said.
Okay, this is not a new take, and this is not a unique take, and this is not even a correct take, which, you can say about pretty much everything that conservatives fucking recycle. The only thing they recycle, which is, old talking points. He literally is just doing the exact same thing that they do all the fucking time, which is like black people.
I find it interesting he's talking about conservatives utilizing old talking points or talking points within themselves when we're talking about conservatism, conserving certain ideas that we can carry forward that are good and getting rid of the bad. So, of course, you would take old talking points and carry those forward when you're conservative. What an idiot. I'm sorry. That's
about
just idiotic.
Racism ended when slavery ended. Okay, maybe not. Racism ended when, Martin Luther King ended racism. During the Civil Rights Movement. Okay, maybe not. Racism ended when Obama became president. Like, that's just the most common fucking right-wing retaliation. No analysis whatsoever about, like, why intergenerational poverty plays a significant role in the development of certain communities and how that still has lasting impact in contemporary society. And every single time you try to have that conversation, they turn around and go, no, they're going to rely on the pre-existing white supremacist attitudes that the audience holds on to as well, especially a conservative audience like that. The pre-existing attitudes that they have about pre-existing white supremacist attitudes they have about like black people cause crimes, they're scary. And then they complain about it and say, well, we had no other choice. We're doing crimes because, slavery. Every single sociological school of thought agrees with you. Material conditions is what will likely be the...
I think there is some truth actually to that argument that Hasan is saying. I would like to actually hear him expand more upon that so I can learn from what he's trying to say, because I think I understand what he's trying to correlate to in terms of conservatives and Republicans, which is what I am, to talking about certain rates of crime, that there's 13% of the population that's committing 50% of the murder, all these other things. But I mean, that also goes with the white side. I mean, when you look at the crime statistics from, I think it's the Washington Post that goes back, a couple decades, that you can find the same stat for white people. Granted, the proportions are different, that you have more of the population committing a certain amount of crime, which you'd kind of expect because there's more people. I'm just not exactly sure where Hasan's kind of going with that argument, but maybe I'll find a video later on that will kind of showcase what he's trying to say.
What will be the likelihood of crime occurring? Yes. And it's not even new. Like fucking ancient Greece, they had this argument. Like people understood this concept that crime is a consequence of poverty all the fucking way back in like ancient Greece.
No,
and conservatives...
there again, that's depending on when you're looking at history. Yes, that could be true, but there's certain pockets within history as well that is not true. So when you had, I believe it was the Great Depression. Forgive me, I'm trying to reach back in my memory, but I believe it was the Great Depression that actually saw a decrease in crime when there was a lot of poverty. So that doesn't actually follow all the way through. I think there's more information regarding certain time periods as to why poverty increased and decreased. But again, what I consistently see from the left is that they throw a blanket statement on certain things that must carry all the way through all the time. Again, I'm bringing it back, just like the definition of wokeness is too broad when you're talking about bringing awareness to some oppressed or victimized group. Well, again, sometimes they're bringing that victimization on a group, bringing about that wokeness that group is talking about, when in actuality, they haven't been a victim of that oppression that was caused in the past, the present. That's all I'm saying here. So
back then,
continue.
We're advocating against that as they are now. So not much has changed. It's either intrinsic or extrinsic factors that have held Black people back. Okay. If you believe there are intrinsic factors, you believe that Black people are somehow genetically different than white people or Jewish people or other historically marginalized communities. And that's why they are not able to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. If you think that it's extrinsic factors, then you understand that structural racism exists, which, by the way, the intrinsic factors that's just literally you're racist. You're just trying to add an intellectual patina to your white supremacist attitude when you say that. Black people are genetically
See, if you kind of question things and you bring about both intrinsic and external factors, then you're a racist, right? When you bring in the aspect of, hey, two people living in the same home, maybe you have one person that's adopted and one person that isn't. Maybe you have a white person that's adopted by a Black family, and you know what, you have IQ levels, and you look at the disparity between those IQ levels of the white person and the Black person, and you start questioning those things, that IQ ultimately removed a prerequisite for that person in order to get into some sort of a field or allow them to excel in some sort of education or something like that. You're racist now because you're analyzing the disparity on an intrinsic level based on IQ between two races. It's mind-blowing that just because you ask questions and that you actually look at intrinsic value that are within people. And I'm not saying that there's any sort of connection between the amount of melanin in somebody's skin and their cognitive brain. That is not what I'm saying. I don't think race has anything to do with anything. I think it's somebody's characteristics, their behavior, the milieu that they grew up in, all sorts of things that led to them doing something that created some sort of disparity, or they did something that was bad versus good or something like that. So I don't agree that race has to do with anything. But he's bringing up just Black people, and I don't know why he's just assuming all Black people at once. Black people come from all sorts of different socioeconomic backgrounds. They come from all sorts of walks of life, all sorts of different educational fields, different parts of the world. So I don't get why we're putting a blanket statement on all Black people here.
Inferior, and that's why there are in destitute, poverty-struck conditions. That was the original talking point all the way until the fucking 60s. Straight up, go back to any fucking circumstance, go back to the Jim Crow era, go back to Reconstruction, go back to any era, and you will hear from conservatives openly state that Black people were genetically different and therefore inferior and therefore servile or therefore aggressive and angry. Now, when it became inappropriate to openly state that, then they moved on to different ways of saying that same thing. They tried to, again, go back to the science and justify it through the...
I find it interesting that he's focusing on just white people, but if you actually zoom in a little bit further, it wasn't it depends on what period in time you're talking about in terms of politics within the United States or just kind of make up the United States. I don't know what specific time he's talking about, but if you look at the difference between a Democrat and a Republican early on, Jim Crow or before, the 1960s or before, you're predominantly talking about white Democrat men who, the left kind of branched off from that to turn into progressives, to turn into leftist progressives. So I don't know if he's describing the own people that he kind of situated with in a party level in terms of politics, but there is some truth to what he's saying. Absolutely. I'm not full-heartedly disagreeing with him. I just trying to understand which moment in time he's talking about, because again, him just throwing a blank statement of like, this is what it is. I'd like to have a discussion about very specific areas, and maybe he can't do that through the Twitch right now, but I just want to kind of understand him a little bit more. I don't want people to think I'm attacking Hasan or going after him. I think there's definitely some things that he said that is idiotic. I'm sure there's things that he's going to say that he thinks that I'm saying are idiotic, 100%. But I just want to know more, again, the idea of where he's coming from on this. I get it on a big picture level, but on a micro individual level, I'm not sure if I fully understand.
Bell curve, or they tried to say, well, it's their culture. It's their culture that is the reason why black people are in worse material circumstances than white people. I mean, this is a political strategy as well here.
No, I mean, and we'll end it there. I think he's going to go on for another seven minutes on something else. And I wanted this video to be more about the debate, but I think him talking about, whether it's the bell curve or about culture, I 100% agree that it'd be more based on culture, because cultural issues could be on a macro and a micro level, and that culture forms from a society all the way down to the individual, even to within their own family, which is why you have people like Thomas Sowell, and Discrimination and Disparities, and also what is it, the book titled with his White Liberals and Rednecks or something like that. He talks about certain cultures and how certain values got passed down even to the individual level, but those cultures can change within a family, which is why I brought up the intrinsic things like the IQ scores or prerequisites that somebody could have, because if you lack in one of those departments, then if you're missing a prerequisite that will help you get into a certain field or a certain area that you're looking at, then that's ultimately going to cause some sort of disparity, which, even though it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with oppression or racism or an institution, because you lack that certain intrinsic value, then that could ultimately hinder you on later in life. Then it doesn't make you woke. There's no traumatic thing that's going passed down from that. Then you can't possibly be woke. And that's what Ben's kind of saying here, is that not all traumas are passed down, and not all those traumas that are passed down, including that, are from, in fact, oppression or some sort of woke alertness that you want to bring down. So that's, I believe, what's being said. Maybe I'm missing it because it looked like me and Hasan were watching two different debates here happening. Hell, it wasn't even a debate. The guy was just literally interrupting Ben the entire time. Then Hasan was kind of swinging it into more of a progressive leftist view to make it seem like Ben ran away, which he didn't. Ben sat there on the podium, answered the guy's question, even correlated back to the 1930s. And then Hasan goes, oh, well, you're just saying the N-word. You might as well say that all black people are committing crimes. It's just a bunch of hubbub and foo-foo, which, again, I don't know if Hasan is doing this because he's on Twitch and that he's trying to cater to his audience. But, folks, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it with that. And, folks, I will see you later here on The Bob Brad Show.